The German sniper had chosen his position with care. It was late afternoon on November 23, 1944, in the dense forests east of Herken, where the trees grew so thick that even at midday the ground remained in perpetual twilight. He had crawled into place before dawn, settling into a shallow scrape beneath a fallen oak, his Carabina 98K rifle with its ZF-39 scope resting on a padded bipod. The scope, manufactured by Carl Zeiss in Jana, offered 4-power magnification, crisp optics that German snipers had trusted since the invasion of Poland. Through that scope, he could see the American positions clearly, over 400 yards distant, where infantry from the 28th Division had dug in among the shattered tree stumps. He had made 3 kills that morning, each shot placed with the precision drilled into him at the sniper school in Senaga. Each American soldier dropped without warning, without even the sound of the rifle shot reaching their ears before the bullet arrived. His spotter, positioned slightly behind and to his left, marked each hit in a small notebook. The Americans were reacting predictably, keeping their heads down, moving only when necessary. Their advance stalled, then something changed. An American rifleman appeared at the edge of a foxhole, but this one carried a Gare, and with a scope mounted at top the receiver. The German sniper had seen scoped Springfields before, the M19-103A4 rifles that some American units used, equipped with low-power Weaver scopes that offered barely 2.5 times magnification. Those rifles were bolt-action, slow, and their scopes fogged easily in the damp European weather. This was different. This was a semi-automatic rifle with optics. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The German adjusted his position slightly, bringing his scope to bear on the American sniper's location. Before he could settle his breathing for the shot, the American fired. The first round struck a tree 6 inches from the German's head, spraying bark fragments across his field of view. He flinched instinctively, breaking his shooting position. The second round arrived less than a second later, impacting the log directly in front of his rifle. The third round hit the ground beside his left boot, 3 shots in under 3 seconds at over 400 YD from a semi-automatic rifle. The German and his spotter abandoned their position, crawling backward through the underbrush, leaving their carefully prepared hide. In his 4 years of combat, from the Eastern Front to Normandy to this miserable forest, the German sniper had never encountered an opponent who could deliver accurate, rapid fire at that distance. The Americans were not supposed to have this capability. Their doctrine emphasized volume of fire over precision. Their equipment was mass-produced, adequate, but not exceptional. Their snipers used obsolete bolt-action rifles with inferior optics. Except now, apparently, they did not. This was the moment when German assumptions about American marksmanship began to collapse. This was the beginning of a psychological shift that would ripple through Wehrmacht sniper units across the Western Front. The Americans had developed something that combined the semi-automatic firepower of the M1 Gare and with optical precision that approached German standards. And they were producing these rifles not in small batches for elite units, but in quantities that suggested industrial-scale deployment. The story of how this happened and what it meant for the men who faced these weapons begins not in the forests of Germany, but in the design bureaus and proving grounds of the United States, years before the first M1C Gare and sniper rifle ever reached the front lines. German military doctrine had emphasized precision marksmanship since the First World War. The experience of trench warfare, where a single well-placed shot could eliminate an officer or machine gun crew, had convinced German planners that trained snipers were force multipliers worthy of institutional investment. When the VE prepared for the Second World War, sniper training was formalized into a comprehensive system that other nations struggled to match. The sniper school at Senella, established in the 1930s, produced graduates who understood ballistics, wind reading, camouflage, and fieldcraft at levels that required months of dedicated instruction. Candidates were selected based on demonstrated shooting ability, patience, and psychological stability. The washout rate exceeded 50%. Those who completed training received not just a rifle, but an identity as elite soldiers whose individual actions could influence entire engagements. The rifles they carried were purpose, built for precision. The Carabina 98K, Germany's standard bolt-action rifle, was selected for accuracy and fitted with telescopic sights manufactured by Carl Zeiss or Hensoldt. The ZF-39 scope, introduced in 1941, offered 4-power magnification with exceptional optical clarity. German optical engineering was unmatched in the early war period. Zeiss factories in Jena produced glass that minimized chromatic aberration and maintained clarity in low-light conditions. The scope tubes were nitrogen purged to prevent internal fogging, a critical feature in the damp climates of northern Europe and Russia. The mounting system, while not quick detachable like later designs, was robust and maintained zero even after rough handling. German snipers could engage targets reliably at 600 YD, and exceptional shooters extended that to 800 YD or more when conditions permitted. The combination of quality optics, match-grade ammunition, and extensive training created a capability that dominated battlefields from the Arctic Circle to North Africa. On the Eastern Front, German snipers achieved results that bordered on the unbelievable. Matthias Hetzenau, serving with the 3rd Mountain Division, was officially credited with 345 confirmed kills. Joseph Alabberger, also of the 3rd Mountain Division, recorded 257 confirmed kills. These numbers were not propaganda inventions. They were documented in unit records, each kill verified by a spotter or officer. The vast open spaces of the Eastern Front, the static nature of much of the fighting, and the target-rich environment of masked Soviet infantry created ideal conditions for sniper operations. Soviet forces responded by developing their own sniper programs, producing legendary shooters like Vasily Zaitsev and Luda Pavlichenko. The sniper duel became a recognized form of warfare on the Eastern Front, with both sides investing heavily in training and equipment. But when Germany turned its attention west, first to France in 1940 and later to the defense of occupied Europe, German snipers encountered opponents less prepared for this kind of warfare. British and American forces in 1944 were rebuilding sniper capabilities that had atrophied between the wars. The British had some institutional memory from the First World War and moved faster to train snipers and equip them with scoped lean-field rifles. The Americans lagged behind, hampered by doctrine that emphasized rapid maneuver and overwhelming firepower rather than individual marksmanship. When American forces landed in North Africa in November 1942, they brought almost no dedicated sniper capability. The M193 Springfield rifle, a bolt-action design from 1903, remained in limited service primarily as a sniper platform. But scoped versions were rare and issued only to specific units. The scopes themselves, typically commercial Weaver or Lyman models adapted for military use, offered low magnification and were prone to failure under combat conditions. The M1903, A4 adopted in January 1943, represented the Army's first systematic attempt to field a sniper rifle. It was a compromised solution, born of necessity. The Springfield Armory removed the iron sights from standard M1903 A3 rifles and mounted a Weaver 330C commercial telescopic sight, designated M73B1 in military nomenclature. The scope offered 2.5 times magnification, less than German scopes, and used a simple crosshair reticle without range compensation features. The optical quality was adequate for hunting rifles, but marginal for military sniping. The scope tubes were not sealed against moisture. In the humidity of the Pacific or the rain-soaked hedge of Normandy, internal fogging was common. The scope mounting system used a single screw clamp that could shift under recoil, losing zero. Worse, the M19-103A4 was a bull taction rifle in an army that had built its infantry tactics around the semi-automatic M1 Gare, and American infantry doctrine in the Second World War emphasized fire superiority through volume. The M1 Gare, and adopted in 1936, gave American riflemen a significant advantage in sustained firepower. An 8-round en-bloc clip system allowed faster reloading than the 5-round stripper clips used by German and Soviet rifles. Semi-automatic fire meant an American soldier could deliver accurate shots as fast as he could pull the trigger and require his target. This philosophy extended to every level of infantry organization. The Browning automatic rifle provided squad-level automatic fire. The Browning M1 919 medium machine gun and the 50 caliber M2 heavy machine gun saturated larger areas. American units expected to suppress enemy positions with overwhelming firepower, then maneuver under that suppression. Individual marksmanship, while valued, was secondary to collective fire, discipline, and volume. Sniper operations did not fit naturally into this doctrine. A sniper worked alone or with a single spotter, engaging individual targets at long range rather than contributing to suppressive fire. The training pipeline was underdeveloped. Some divisions ran their own informal sniper schools, teaching willing soldiers the basics of long-range shooting and camouflage. The Marine Corps, drawing on its tradition of marksmanship, maintained better sniper training than the Army. But even Marine snipers in the Pacific primarily used M19-103A4 rifles with their inherent limitations. German snipers facing American forces in Italy and later in France quickly recognized these weaknesses. American infantry were aggressive but often careless about exposure. Officers stood upright to direct their men. Soldiers moved without properly scanning for threats. Radio operators carried distinctive antennas. Medics wore visible brassards. All of these made ideal targets for patient snipers who understood that eliminating leaders and specialists could paralyze entire units. The psychological effect was significant. American soldiers learned to fear open ground, to move only when covered by smoke or suppressive fire, to avoid any behavior that might draw a sniper's attention. In the Bocage country of Normandy, where hedgerows limited visibility and channeled movement, German snipers could dominate entire sectors with just a few well-laced shooters. In the Hürtgen forest, where trees provided concealment and engagement ranges shortened, the advantage shifted further toward defenders who could prepare positions and wait. American commanders recognized the problem, but struggled to develop effective counters. Counter-sniper operations required dedicated training, quality optics, and patience that conflicted with the aggressive tempo of American operations. Some units detailed their best shots as impromptu snipers, issuing them M19-103A4 rifles and whatever instruction experienced soldiers could provide. Results were mixed. A talented shooter with a bolt, a CT-on rifle, and a low power scope could compete with German snipers only under ideal conditions and usually at a disadvantage. The development of an effective American sniper rifle began not with military demand, but with recognition of a fundamental problem. The Ordnance Department understood that the M19-103A4, while better than nothing, represented a step backward from the firepower advantage that defined American infantry tactics. Issuing snipers' bolt-action rifles, while every other rifleman carried a semi-automatic, Garand created a capability gap that made no tactical sense. John Garand himself had contemplated a scoped version of his rifle as early as 1937, but the challenges were significant. The M1 Gare, and operated through a gas system that tapped propellant gases from the barrel to cycle the action. This meant the rifle had moving parts above the barrel that interfered with traditional scope mounting positions. The en-bloc clip system ejected upward through the top of the receiver when empty, requiring clearance that conventional scope mounts would obstruct. Any scope mounting solution had to work around these mechanical constraints without compromising the rifle's reliability. Springfield Armory experimented with various configurations through the early 1940s. Side-mounted scopes offered one solution, positioning the optic offset to the left of the receiver's center line. This approach preserved the Garand's gas system and clip ejection path, but created problems with cheek weld and eye relief. A shooter had to his head awkwardly to align his eye with a side-mounted scope, making rapid target acquisition difficult and causing neck fatigue during extended use. The breakthrough came with the Griffin and Howe mount, a commercial design adapted for military use. James Howe and Seymour Griffin, gunsmiths who had built custom sporting rifles since the 1920s, developed a scope mount that attached to the left side of the M1 receiver using the existing mounting holes for the rifle's rear sight. The mount positioned a long eye relief scope forward and slightly left of the receiver, allowing the shooter to maintain a relatively natural cheek weld while preserving the rifle's ability to eject clips. In January 1944, Springfield Armory designated this configuration the M1C. The rifle used a standard M1 Gare and action with minor modifications to accept the scope mount. The optic was a Weaver 330C commercial hunting scope, the same model used on the M1900-3A4, now designated M73 in military service. Later production would use an improved version designated M84, essentially identical in optical specifications but with minor improvements to the adjustment mechanisms. The M73 and M84 scopes offered 2 and 1/2 times magnification, significantly less than the 4 power scopes used by German snipers. The objective lens diameter measured 43 mm, providing adequate light transmission, but less than optimal performance in dawn or dusk conditions. The scope tube was 1 in diameter, built to commercial rather than military standards eye relief. The distance from the eye to the rear lens measured approximately 3 in, adequate for the M1's recoil, but requiring careful head positioning. The reticle consisted of a simple cross, here called a post and cross, here design with a tapered post rising from the bottom of the field of view and meeting a horizontal cross, here at center. This design worked adequately for range estimation and holdover calculation, though it lacked the sophistication of German range-finding reticles. Adjustments for windage and elevation were made through exposed turrets that clicked in quarter-minute of angle increments, theoretically allowing precise zeroing at various ranges. Production of the M1C began in June 1944 at Springfield Armory. The initial contract called for 7 0s rifles, a number that reflected both the experimental nature of the program and the limited manufacturing capacity available. Each rifle required hand fitting of the scope mount to ensure proper alignment and zero retention. Armorers selected standard M1 Garands from production, installed the mounting hardware, fitted and bore-sighted the scopes, then test-fired each rifle to verify accuracy. Quality control was inconsistent in these early production runs. Some rifles achieved excellent accuracy, grouping within 2 in at 100 yards with match-grade ammunition. Others struggled to maintain foreign groups barely better than a standard M1 Gare, and with iron sights. The commercial Weaver scopes while adequate for hunting, showed reliability problems under military use. Scope tubes developed internal fogging in wet conditions. Adjustment turrets shifted under recoil. Reticles separated from their mounting points inside the scope tube. Springfield Armory addressed some issues through improved quality control and component selection, but fundamental limitations remained. The M73 and M84 scopes were commercial products adapted for military use, not purpose-designed military optics. They lacked the robust construction and optical quality of German Zeiss scopes. The 2.5 times magnification, while better than iron sights, gave American snipers a significant disadvantage in optical power compared to German 4-power scopes. Despite these limitations, the M1C offered one overwhelming advantage: semi-automatic fire. A trained shooter could engage a target, assess the shot's impact, and fire a follow-up round in under 2 seconds without breaking his shooting position or working a bolt. This capability fundamentally changed the dynamics of sniper engagements. German snipers using bolt-action rifles needed 3 to 4 seconds between shots to operate the bolt, chamber a fresh round, and require the target through their scopes. In a counter-sniper duel, those extra seconds could mean the difference between killing and being killed. The first M1C rifles reached combat units in France during September 1944, though in extremely limited quantities. The 1st Infantry Division received a small number for evaluation. The 3rd Infantry Division acquired several dozen for issue to division scouts and reconnaissance units. The 9th Infantry Division equipped selected marksmen in each rifle company. Distribution was haphazard, driven more by availability than systematic planning. Training for these early M1C users was minimal and largely improvised. The Army had no established sniper school in the European theater, comparable to the German facilities at Senarger or the Soviet sniper schools that produced Eastern Front legends. Most instruction occurred at the division or regimental level, conducted by officers and non-commissioned officers who had competitive shooting experience or who had studied German sniper tactics. Through captured documents and prisoner interrogation, a typical training program such as the one established by the 3rd Infantry Division in October 1944 lasted 5 days. Students, usually 1 or 2 men per rifle company, received instruction in scope adjustment and zeroing. On the first day, they learned to bore sight the rifle, aligning the scope's crosshair with the barrel's bore axis, then fired groups at known distances to establish a zero at 200 YD. This differed from German practice, which typically zeroed scopes at 300 meters, but reflected American expectations of shorter engagement ranges in the close terrain of Northern Europe. Days 2 and 3 covered range estimation and holdover techniques. Students learned to estimate distances using the mil-dot spacing in their scope reticles, though the M73 and M84 scopes lacked true mil-dot reticles and required improvised techniques. Instructors taught holdover methods for engaging targets at ranges beyond the rifle's zero distance. At 400 yards, a shooter might hold the tri-cross, air 1 to 2 ft above the target's head, depending on ammunition and atmospheric conditions. At 600 YD, the holdover increased to 4 or 5 ft, making precise hits difficult. Day 4 introduced camouflage and hide construction. Students learned to build firing positions using natural materials to minimize their visual signature and to select positions that offered concealment without restricting fields of fire. This instruction borrowed heavily from German techniques documented in captured training manuals. The emphasis was on patience and discipline. A sniper might occupy a position for hours or even days, taking only a handful of shots when high-value targets presented themselves. The final day consisted of field exercises where students stalked instructors playing the role of enemy snipers. Success was measured by the student's ability to locate and engage a target without being spotted first. Many students failed these exercises, revealing that marksmanship alone did not make an effective sniper. The psychological demands, particularly the patience required to remain motionless for extended periods, proved beyond many soldiers accustomed to aggressive maneuver tactics. Even this abbreviated training produced marksmen significantly more capable than the average rifleman, though still generally inferior to German snipers who had completed months of instruction at dedicated schools. The M1C's semi-automatic capability helped narrow this gap. Where German snipers relied on making the first shot count, knowing that cycling the bolt for a follow-up shot gave their target time to take cover, American M1C shooters could fire second and third rounds quickly enough to catch opponents before they reached safety. Ammunition quality significantly affected the M1C's performance. Standard M2 ball ammunition, the 30-06 cartridge issued to all M1 Gare, and users produced acceptable accuracy but showed significant variation in velocity and trajectory. Bullet weights varied by several grains from one cartridge to another. Powder charges were loaded for reliability rather than precision. At ranges beyond 400 yards, this inconsistency degraded accuracy enough that even skilled shooters struggled to make first-round hits on man-sized targets. Match-grade ammunition existed, designated M72, but production was limited and distribution prioritized competition shooting and specialized applications. Most M1C users in combat never saw M72 ammunition, instead making do with standard ball rounds. This meant their effective range, the distance at which they could reliably hit a man-sized target with the first shot, was limited to approximately 400 to 500 YD under ideal conditions. German snipers using match-grade ammunition with their K98K rifles and 4 power scopes could reliably engage targets at 600 yards and beyond. This range advantage, combined with superior training and better optical quality, meant German snipers still held most advantages in direct engagements. But the Americans had one factor that no amount of training or optical superiority could overcome: numbers. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Springfield Armory's production capacity, even at reduced output for the specialized M1C, exceeded Germany's ability to produce sniper rifles by a substantial margin. The 7.000 M1Cs manufactured in 1944 represented just the initial contract. Production continued through 1945, ultimately delivering over 600 rifles before the war's end. Germany, by contrast, produced approximately 29.000 sniper rifles of all types during the entire war, spread across 6 years and multiple fronts. The industrial disparity extended beyond rifles to optics. American optical companies, including Weaver, Lyman, and others, manufactured commercial scopes in quantities that dwarfed German military production. While the quality might not match Zeiss or Hensoldt, the sheer volume meant American forces could equip snipers at scale German forces, constrained by bombing damage to optical factories and raw material shortages, struggled to produce enough quality scopes to meet demand. The engagement that opened this account in the forests east of Herken on November 23, 1944, was not unique. Similar encounters occurred across the American front. As M1C rifles reached combat, units and soldiers trained in their use began operating against German snipers, who had dominated no man's land for months. Staff Sergeant William Jones, a competitive rifle shooter from Pennsylvania before the war, received an M1C while serving with the 26th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. His regiment was fighting through the Herken Forest, a nightmarish landscape of dense evergreens, steep ravines, and German defenders who had fortified every approach. German snipers made movement suicidal during daylight hours. Officers who exposed themselves to direct their men lasted minutes. Radio operators with their distinctive antennas drew fire constantly. Jones had used an M19 103A4 earlier in the campaign, but found its bolt-action mechanism frustrating. He could make the shot, but by the time he cycled the bolt and required his target through the scope, the German sniper had usually shifted position or taken cover. The M1C changed that equation. On November 28, 1944, Jones identified a German sniper position in a tree line approximately 450 yards from his own concealed location in a destroyed bunker. The German had been active for 2 days, killing at least 4 Americans that Jones knew of, possibly more. Jones studied the position through his M73 scope, watching for movement. The 2.5 times magnification was barely adequate at that range, but he could see enough to identify a hide constructed in the lower branches of a large fir tree. He waited, controlling his breathing, his finger resting lightly on the M1C's trigger. When the German fired at a target Jones could not see, the muzzle blast revealed his exact position. Jones aimed, compensating for the range and a slight right-to-left wind, and fired. The recoil was sharp but manageable. Through the scope, still at his eye, because the M1C's semi-automatic action did not require him to move, he saw his bullet strike low and left, hitting the tree trunk approximately 2 ft below the German's position. A bolt-action rifle would have required 3 seconds to cycle and fire again. The M1C needed less than 1 second. Jones adjusted his point of aim slightly up and right, exhaled halfway, and pressed the trigger. The second shot struck closer, still left, but at the right elevation. The German was moving now, trying to extract himself from his hide. Jones fired a third time. This round hit the German in the upper torso, visible as a sudden violent motion before the body went still. Jones later reported that he fired 4 additional rounds into the position to ensure the kill, a luxury that bolt-action rifles did not afford. The rapid follow-up shots, the ability to adjust fire based on observed impacts without breaking his shooting position, gave him a decisive advantage. The German sniper, skilled and well-equipped, had died not because Jones was a better marksman, but because Jones had a weapon system that allowed him to correct his errors faster than his opponent could react. Similar engagements occurred throughout late 1944 and early 1945 as American forces pushed into Germany. Technical Sergeant Robert Anderson of the 9th Infantry Division engaged a German sniper team near Düren on December 11, 1944. Anderson, using an M1C with an M84 scope, spotted the Germans at approximately 550 yards near the maximum effective range of his equipment. His first shot missed entirely. His second shot struck the spotter, visible through the scope as the man collapsed. His third shot forced the primary sniper to abandon his rifle and flee. Anderson fired 3 more rounds at the running figure, but could not confirm additional hits. The German rifle, a K98K with a ZF-39 scope, was recovered by American infantry who advanced to the position later that day. It was a superior weapon in terms of optical quality and theoretical accuracy. The Zeiss scope was clearer, offered better light transmission, and had more magnification than Anderson's M84. But the German who carried it was dead or wounded, while Anderson survived to engage other targets. First Lieutenant Edward Russell, serving with the 3rd Infantry Division, recorded in his after-action report an engagement near Camargue, France on January 18, 1945. Russell, equipped with an M1C, identified a German sniper in a church bell tower at approximately 600 YD. This was beyond the reliable first shot range of the M73 scope and M2 ball ammunition, but Russell had the advantage of a stationary target in a known position. He fired an entire 8-round clip, adjusting his point of aim after each shot based on where he saw impacts on the stone church wall. His sixth round struck the German, visible through the scope as the figure jerked backward and fell out of sight inside the tower. Russell's report noted that the ability to fire multiple rounds in rapid succession allowed him to walk his fire onto the target, compensating for the limited magnification and uncertain range estimation. A bolt-action rifle would have given the German time to take cover after the first near miss. German snipers across the Western Front began reporting encounters with American semi-automatic sniper rifles in late 1944. Intelligence officers compiled these reports, initially dismissing them as exaggerations or misidentifications. The prevailing assessment held that American snipers used bolt-action Springfield rifles with inferior optics, and that American doctrine did not emphasize individual marksmanship to the degree necessary for effective sniper operations. This assessment became increasingly difficult to maintain as reports accumulated. A document captured from the 352nd Infantry Division in December 1944 included a tactical briefing that specifically warned snipers about American semi-automatic rifles with optical sights. The briefing noted that American snipers could deliver multiple aimed shots in the time a German sniper needed to cycle his bolt and require the target. It recommended that German snipers relocate immediately after each shot, rather than remaining in position to observe the hit. A fundamental change in technique that reduced effectiveness. Another captured document from the 12th SS Panzer Division described an engagement near Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. A German sniper team had engaged American positions from a farmhouse at approximately 500 m. The primary sniper fired, hitting an American soldier. Before he could chamber another round, return fire struck the wall beside his position. He shifted slightly and prepared to fire again. Additional rounds impacted around his position, forcing him and his spotter to abandon the farmhouse entirely. The after-action report noted that the volume and accuracy of return fire suggested multiple snipers, but prisoners taken later confirmed only a single American with a scoped Garand. The psychological impact on German snipers was significant. For years, they had operated with the confidence that came from superior equipment and training. A German sniper with a K-98K and Zeiss scope could engage targets at ranges where return fire was unlikely or ineffective. He could take his time waiting for the perfect shot, knowing that his optical target advantage and accuracy gave him control of the engagement. The appearance of American semi-automatic sniper rifles disrupted this calculus. German snipers now faced opponents who could return fire immediately, who could adjust their aim based on observed bullet impacts, and who could deliver multiple shots before a bolt-action rifle could fire twice. The range advantage that German 4-power scopes provided mattered less when American snipers could compensate for lower magnification through volume of accurate fire. A German sniper might have better optics, but if he revealed his position with a shot and faced 3 or 4 return rounds within seconds, superior magnification provided little comfort. Veteran German snipers, particularly those with Eastern Front experience, adapted their tactics. They fired from positions that offered immediate concealment or withdrawal routes. They limited themselves to single shots before relocating, sacrificing the ability to observe hits or engage multiple targets from one position. They avoided counter-sniper duels when possible, recognizing that the odds had shifted against them. These adaptations reduced German sniper effectiveness significantly. Younger, less experienced German snipers suffered higher casualties. Training programs in Germany, disrupted by Allied bombing and the general collapse of military infrastructure in late 1944 and early 1945, produced graduates with minimal field preparation. These men, equipped with the same quality rifles and optics as veterans, but lacking the experience to compensate for changing tactical conditions, made mistakes that cost them their lives. They remained in position after firing, expecting the seconds of grace that bolt-action opposition had previously provided. They engaged American snipers at ranges where semi-automatic fire negated German optical advantages. American units that received M1C rifles and trained their soldiers to use them effectively reported measurably reduced casualties from German sniper fire. The 26th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, documented this in their unit history. In September 1944, before M1C rifles were issued, the regiment averaged 3 casualties per day from sniper fire during static periods. By January 1945, after M1C rifles had been distributed to company-level marksmen and these soldiers had gained combat experience with the weapons, sniper-caused casualties had dropped to 8 per day, a reduction of approximately 65%. The 3rd Infantry Division reported similar results. Lieutenant Colonel Felix Sparks, commanding the 3rd Battalion, 157th Infantry Regiment, noted in his memoir that the introduction of scoped Garens allowed his unit to fight back effectively against German snipers for the first time. Previously, responding to sniper fire meant calling for artillery or mortars, which took time and often proved ineffective against well-conceded positions. With M1C equipped marksmen in each company, immediate counter-sniper fire became possible, suppressing or eliminating German snipers before they could inflict significant casualties. The industrial dimension of this shift cannot be overstated. Germany's optical manufacturing capacity, concentrated in facilities like the Zeiss Works in Jena, suffered from Allied bombing throughout 1944. Production of military optics declined even as demand increased. By early 1945, many German sniper rifles reached the front without scopes, forcing snipers to use iron sights or to cannibalize optics from damaged rifles. Quality control, always stringent at Zeiss, degraded as experienced workers were conscripted and replaced by forced labor with minimal training. American optical production faced no such constraints. Factories in the United States operated at full capacity, undamaged by enemy action, supplied with raw materials from secure sources. The Weaver Company in El Paso, Texas, manufactured scopes for both civilian and military markets throughout the war. While individual Weaver scopes might not match Zeiss quality, the aggregate production exceeded German output by orders of magnitude. The United States could afford to equip thousands of snipers with adequate optics. Germany struggled to equip hundreds with superior optics. The M1C sniper rifle's impact must be understood within the broader context of snipers with adequate optics. Germany struggled to equip hundreds with superior optics. The M1C sniper rifle's impact must be understood within the broader context of American industrial and material superiority in the final year of the European War. The semi-automatic sniper rifle was one element among many that demonstrated the overwhelming resource advantage the United States brought to bear against Germany. Where Germany allocated scarce manufacturing capacity to produce small numbers of technologically sophisticated weapons, the United States produced adequate weapons in quantities that allowed widespread distribution. This pattern repeated across every category of military equipment. German tanks like the Tiger and Panther were arguably superior to American Shermans in direct combat, but the United States produced Shermans in numbers that made quality advantages irrelevant. German aircraft like the Mi-2, 162 jet fighter, represented technological advancement beyond anything the Americans fielded. But Germany built fewer than 500 Mi-2, 162 seconds, while the United States produced over 12 0 P-51 Mustangs, a conventionally powered fighter adequate to establish air superiority through numbers and operational availability. The M1C followed this same logic. It was not the best sniper rifle of the Second World War. The German K98K with a Zeiss scope probably held that distinction in terms of pure accuracy and optical quality. British Leanfield sniper rifles with their 10-round magazines offered faster bolt-action operation. Soviet Mosin Nagant sniper rifles, crude but effective, equipped the legendary shooters of the Eastern Front. But the M1C was good enough, and it was available in quantities that allowed American forces to field effective snipers at the company level rather than concentrating them in specialized units. By March 1945, as American forces pushed across the Rhine and into the heart of Germany, M1C rifles had reached most frontline infantry divisions. Distribution remained uneven, with some regiments receiving dozens of rifles while others made do with a handful, but the overall trend was toward widespread availability. Training improved as experienced M1 users rotated to rear areas and taught new groups of soldiers. Techniques developed through trial and error in combat filtered back through the training pipeline, creating a body of tactical knowledge that improved effectiveness. German defenders, increasingly composed of undertrained Volksturm militia, Hitler Youth, and remnants of shattered regular units, lacked the institutional capability to maintain sniper operations at previous levels. The veteran snipers who had dominated battlefields in France and Italy were dead, captured, or withdrawn to defend critical sectors. Their replacements, given rifles and minimal instruction, could not replicate the results that years of training and combat experience had produced. When these inexperienced German snipers encountered American M1 users, the engagements were brief and one-sided. A captured German document from April 1945, originating from the 47th Volk Grenadier Division defending along the Eller River, included instructions for snipers that reflected the changed tactical situation. Snipers were ordered to engage only high-value targets, officers, radio operators, or vehicle crews. They were to fire no more than 2 shots from any position before withdrawing to a PREP, land alternate location. They were explicitly warned that American forces now possessed semi-automatic sniper rifles and that remaining in position after firing would likely result in immediate and accurate return fire. These instructions represented a complete reversal of the confident, aggressive sniper doctrine Germany had employed earlier in the war. German snipers were now operating defensively, taking minimal risks, focused on survival rather than inflicting maximum casualties. The M1C had not created this situation alone. The overall collapse of German military capability played a larger role, but the semi-automatic sniper rifle contributed to the psychological pressure that made German snipers less effective in their final months of combat. American soldiers who used M1C rifles in combat carried mixed assessments of the weapon. Most appreciated the semi-automatic capability, the ability to fire follow-up shots without breaking position. Many criticized the optical quality, noting that the Weaver scopes fogged easily, that the adjustments did not hold zero reliably, and that the 2.5 times magnification was barely adequate. For ranges beyond 400 YD, some preferred the M19-103A4 Springfield despite its bolt-action limitation, valuing the slightly better accuracy and the more familiar shooting position. Staff Sergeant Jones, the Pennsylvania competitive shooter mentioned earlier, wrote in a letter home in February 1945 that the M1C was a good enough rifle for the job we need done, but not a great rifle by any measure. He noted that he could engage targets faster with the M1C than with a bolt-action rifle, but that he wished for better optics and match-grade ammunition. His assessment was typical. The M1C worked. It gave American snipers a fighting chance against German opponents who had previously dominated, but it remained a compromised solution rather than an optimal design. The Marine Corps in the Pacific Theater received M1C rifles in limited numbers during early 1945. Marines fighting on Uima and Okinawa used them against Japanese snipers who operated from caves, fortified positions, and spider holes. The semi-automatic capability proved valuable in these engagements, though the close ranges and dense terrain of Pacific Island fighting meant that magnified optics provided less advantage than in European open country. Most Marines preferred the M1C to the Bull, Taction Springfield, but the margin of preference was smaller than in Europe, where engagement ranges were typically longer. The German sniper who abandoned his position in the Hertz gun forest on November 23, 1944, after encountering rapid, accurate fire from an American semi-automatic rifle, experienced a moment of recognition that encapsulated a larger truth about the war's final phase. His training had been excellent. His equipment was high quality. His skills, honed through years of combat, were formidable. None of it mattered when his opponent possessed a weapon system that negated his advantages through superior rate of fire and industrial availability. This pattern repeated across every domain of the Second World War's conclusion. German technological sophistication in armor, aircraft, and small arms could not compensate for Allied material superiority. Individual German soldiers, often better trained and more experienced than their American counterparts, fought with courage and skill that made no difference to the outcome. The industrial capacity of the United States, the ability to produce adequate weapons in overwhelming quantities, proved decisive. The M1C Gare and sniper rifle embodied this reality. It was not a revolutionary weapon. It did not represent a technological break, through comparable to radar or the proximity fuse. It was simply a competent rifle with adequate optics produced in sufficient numbers to equip American forces at a scale Germany could not match. The semi-automatic capability, the defining feature that separated it from Bull, Taction sniper rifles, came not from innovation, but from the decision to adapt existing technology, the proven M1 Gare and action for a specialized role. German snipers in late 1944 and early 1945 found themselves in an impossible position. Their optical advantage, the 4 Power Zeiss scopes that had given them dominance for years, mattered less when American snipers could fire 3 rounds in the time a bolt action permitted one. Their training advantage, the months of instruction at dedicated schools, eroded as the experienced snipers died and replacements received abbreviated preparation. Their tactical advantage, the ability to control no man's land through precision fire, disappeared when American forces could respond with immediate, accurate counter-sniper fire. This psychological impact extended beyond individual engagements. German soldiers across the Western Front learned that American forces possessed capabilities they had not anticipated. The Americans were not just numerous and well supplied. They were increasingly competent with weapons that matched or exceeded German equipment in critical areas. The myth of German technological and tactical superiority, already badly damaged by years of strategic defeats, shattered completely in the face of American material abundance and growing battlefield effectiveness. For American soldiers, the M1C represented validation of their industrial system and military doctrine. The United States had identified a capability gap, German sniper superiority, and addressed it through engineering adaptation and mass production rather than attempting to replicate German methods. Exactly, the result was not the best sniper rifle in the world, but it was good enough, and there were enough of them to make a difference. This approach, applying adequate technology at scale, characterized American military operations throughout the war. The story of the M1C Gare and sniper rifle and its effect on German snipers is ultimately a story about resources and industrial capacity. A well-trained German sniper with a superior rifle and optic could not overcome an opponent who possessed a weapon system that allowed faster engagement and who belonged to an army that could replace casualties, equipment, and ammunition at rates Germany could never match. The individual skill and courage of German snipers made their final battles more costly for American forces, but did not change the outcome. When the war in Europe ended in May 1945, thousands of M1C rifles remained in American armories. Many would see service in Korea, where the semi-automatic capability again proved valuable against opponents using bolt-action rifles. The design influenced post- or sniper rifle development, establishing semi-automatic operation as a desirable feature for military precision rifles. The lessons learned in deploying, training, and employing M1-equipped snipers informed American sniper doctrine for decades. But in November 1944, in the forests east of Herken, the German sniper who heard American bullets striking around his position in rapid succession understood none of this larger context. He knew only that his advantage had disappeared, that the Americans could now shoot back with speed and accuracy that made his position untenable. He withdrew, survived that engagement, and perhaps fought in others. The outcome of those engagements and the war itself had already been determined by forces far beyond his control or comprehension. The M1 canned did not win the war. No single weapon system did, but it represented the kind of practical, industrial solution that characterized American victory. Identify a problem, develop an adequate solution, produce it in quantity, and deploy it widely against an opponent constrained by limited resources and collapsing infrastructure. Adequate weapons in abundance defeated superior weapons in scarcity. The German sniper, with his excellent Zeiss scope, learned this truth the same way German tank crews learned it facing Sherman. Tanks and German fighter pilots learned it facing waves of American bombers. Through the overwhelming material reality of industrial warfare, where production capacity ultimately mattered more than individual quality. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now.